Hi everybody. Um, I go by the name of Aphendule Pagade, also known as Ape, capital APHE. Um, I'm coming today. I'm actually very nervous about this because it's a topic that is tough to communicate and to make one understand, and for you also to understand the truth of it, because at the end of the day, with all these things, we always have to realize the root and the truth of matters, and not just speak or see things out of ignorance. And I think it's very important that we be educated about certain things and why certain results happen in the world. So I was having this urge this morning to make a DMC about what is going on in our country right now. Um, it's a national crisis. We've been having a lot of crises, from the pandemic, the GPVs, the loss of jobs. Now we have a whole riot and looting and people dying in the process also, and people losing a lot in the process, losing a lot of material, losing a lot of their businesses. So, watching the news, it was uh, it was a tough watch, but at the same time, if I'm being honest with you guys, it's not like it's something that threw me off guard. None of what's going on right now is throwing me off guard. I, in fact, expected something like this to happen eventually, especially after I saw what happened with the Black Lives Matter movement in America, and how it turned out to become riots and lootings and all of these things. People taking the opportunity of the chaos to take as much as they could, or as much as they can. So, someone will ask me what my opinion on the situation is, and I always think that it's important for me to share my opinion with serious matters like this, because I also started this channel on the basis of speaking about topics such as these, speaking about difficult topics, especially as young people, because we are the future of this generation. We need to also be present with when things hit the fan. It's not always all good. It's not always going to be sunshine and roses. We're not always going to be celebrating. Sometimes it's going to be hectic, and we have to be confrontational with that um, hectic situation. So right now, the first thing that I want to do, because as I start these things, I never really have like a proper plan of what I'm going to say. I usually just speak from the heart, because that is where I'm going to really share my truth and my true thoughts. And you know what? May not always be right. Maybe somebody else may have another opinion they can add on, and that's what this is all about. Is for us to add a certain voice to situations, opinions, your knowledge about something, so that we can all be educated. But it must also be based on the truth, at the root of it. Um, so why I was saying that I never really was surprised that this thing was coming was, I was having a conversation with somebody in the car. I don't remember, but I remember the conversation because of me looking around my situation. It was during the times when I was in the rabbit race, in the rat race, and going and looking around you, seeing the world around you. You seeing something is wrong, obviously, and a lot of us know that. I mean, there's been a lot of poverty and unemployment and looting of funds that are supposed to go to the country and the benefit of the people of the country. Um, we see a lot of corruption. We see a lot of uh, the gap, the economic gap that happens. People in one place and another group of people in another place, and things being set up in classes and people having more privilege than others, basically inequality as human beings on this earth. So now, what I was seeing and why I was kind of advocating for the EFF also in the beginnings and the things that they were saying was because there was something that Malema said that was very that struck me and that was very important. He said that what would the people do if I wasn't here because there isn't anybody giving them hope about where they're going because they are literally struggling every single day of their lives and they have been given promises every time and they always are flashed and presented with certain things and they cannot attain and they cannot survive some of them. And if you go into these places and you see the conditions that people live in, this is why this is important for one to be aware of their surroundings. Is a lot of people that speak from a place of ignorance because they haven't been in those situations. They haven't really lived the life of somebody. So if you've never been in a man's shoes, then you cannot really necessarily judge their actions. You know, you can try and understand them first, and if you have a better understanding and knowledge of how you can help them, then do so. And I feel like they would be willing to take the help. In fact, they have been wanting the help for a very long time, but they haven't been getting it. So, what is the solution for them? You know, they look at their leaders, and their leaders are telling them things and they promising them things, and then they are patient and patient for years and years, and a generation to a generation now starting. And you seeing a bigger separation and in the gap also of rich and poor. Things get more expensive and a way of life gets more harder to attain, especially when you're coming from the bottom. So now, what I used to think when I was seeing these things, I was like, one day I feel like there's gonna be a revolution because what history also tells us, because I used to do history in high school, and what I saw was whenever there was, say, like a king or whatever, and people were being exploited, people would stomach it for some time, but eventually they crack. And I think it's something in the human nature where the survival instinct kicks in. Because we must remember also that as much as we think we're so special and because we're human beings, we are part of the earth, we're part of the animal kingdom. We are animals in essence, just with a higher consciousness, but we have DNAs of animals. And if you watch animals, um, they do what's necessary to survive. And it's kill or be killed. You know, it gets to that point. And there is that trigger that happens when you have to one feed yourself and two feed your kids and feed your family, especially when you are the ones providing. Say you guys are parents and you have children and you can't let them go hungry, and at the same time there isn't any hope of you getting any food or getting any access to survival. So now, for a long time, I'm watching this and I'm thinking, I'm watching like people like struggling basically to get by because of us being in this type of system that requires a certain education to get a certain placing and get certain connections and relationships in certain places and getting uh, kind of like being in a bubble of some sort because you're living far away from where most of the South Africans are. And once you go into those places, you start seeing the lack of many things. I remember taking a drive also in the hood, and me and like Star were actually talking about this. Of like, yeah, it's actually this issue is not sustainable, you know. People are squashed together. There isn't any hygiene. There isn't much grass. There isn't much trees. There isn't like the little things that you can appreciate about staying in a suburban area. You know, so there's water leakages. There's the people there have to travel long distance to their workplace and they work long hours and then they have to come back and also the transportation, long queues going into taxis and so on. So think of all these things psychologically as a person. It's gonna trigger you. Like you guys are suffering mentally as the privileged already. You know, your routines are already a lot of strain. You get strained from being in traffic even. Now think about those people who live like that. You know, who have to wake up probably at 4 a.m., some 3 a.m. in the morning. You know, some taxi drivers wake up really early so that they can catch the earliest bird of people who are going to work early, who have to get in at 7 o'clock, but they live way down that side and their job is way the other side in the suburban area and they have to make their way there so they have to prepare early and then they get there and then they finish the work at like 7 p.m. at night and now they have to like come back and go back home but now they have to first wait in line, wait for taxis and so on and then they get home and mind you they're also in danger of any criminality. You guys are even scared of just walking alone in the dark or walking just to the shop up the road because you might get mugged. I've been mugged a couple of times. So think about that and that's somebody's everyday reality. And then on top of that, they have the media presenting them constantly with flashiness, great lifestyle, you know, all this food, all these products, all these TVs, all these things. And some of them come and work here in the estates and they look around and they see people living nice and, you know, on top of their struggle. So imagine how you feel also when you start envying someone else because now they have a higher success than you. Like, yes, you better, you well off, but you are the terms bawel, you know, uyabawa, uqala ukubawa izinto zabanye abantu and then it does something to your spirit. You get a certain sense of bitterness or whatever the case is. And that's why you also start seeing a lot of people hating on successful people. You know, you see the things on Twitter and what people say and comments and all of these different things. Um, and it's like I thought you guys were preaching for us to be successful, and once we get there, it's like now we try to tear you down. You know, we try to say bad things because we think now you're all of a sudden not human anymore, and all of a sudden you're strong enough to handle all the negativity. But that negativity comes from people being bitter from not having, you know, what you have, and you constantly showing them in their face and not doing anything to even try help them. So it's hard to speak from a place of privilege sometimes, but you always have to be, especially if you are, be ready to listen, be ready to investigate, be ready to understand so that you can sort of relate. You can't fully relate, but you can sort of have some empathy for certain situations. So, leading me to that, I was like, it's like that time. I don't know if you guys know the story of the king back in France, who the French Revolution, where the people were so poor and the king was like fat and eating all this big food, and their dinner tables had a lot of food, and the palace was golden and fresh, and you know, and people are working and paying taxes, and these taxes are feeding these people and they're literally fed, and the people down are starving and they're hungry and they're just slaving away, you know, till it got to a point where the people rose against the power structure and took over and even killed the king. So the human nature, I feel, gets to a point where it gets fed up and all care, you know, goes out the window and you don't really have much sense of um, thought for or what the law thinks. For example, if there's an opportunity that presents itself now, and there's chaos and people are rioting and breaking stuff. Definitely, all those people who are hungry this whole time, all those people who've been struggling all these years, who've been patient, who've been dealing with all of this, a life of theirs, have an opportunity to just go and take something without any repercussions because everybody is on it, you know? So the more people go into it, the more follow because this is opportunity. Like we're not all going to be arrested, we're not all going to be taken in, and all of that. So now people are going out of desperation to take from a system that has oppressed them all these years, to take back from the system that has worked them and working them like slaves. Basically, I would put it like that. I feel like we are living in modern day slavery. It's just that how propaganda works is a concept can be painted in a certain way. So I could still enslave you, but in the name of this is what it is. In the name of it's a job. Everybody needs a job. And then you grow up also being taught that you need to get one from your parents who've been taught by their parents, who've been taught by whoever else, you know. We come from a very enslaved place and still are mentally, spiritually, physically, you know, we are constantly crushed down. And as soon as we think we are free, they present us with a new idea of what the freedom is, but it just keeps us in another loop. Because it's like I used to say, we think that we're out of apartheid, but we're not really because we're still apart. We're still living the way it was lived back then. There's still the same discrimination. There's still the few blacks that are privileged, living amongst the white neighborhoods, and there are still people who cannot elevate to a certain place in life if they come from a certain place in life. It's very rare that it happens, but in the mad mass of things, it doesn't usually happen like that. So most of your life you're going to spend basically struggling because that's also the reality you know, and that's where you grew up in. And it's also like, speaking of that, when we went with Jerry, the guy who was driving us for the 27 days walk, um, he he told me something that I never really thought about before, which shocked me. You know, he said that he had never been out of Gauteng. He had never been out of his environment. You know, in the hood, and this us going to Eastern Cape traveling was an eye opener for him and it opened his mind and he actually saw land and he actually saw space and actually had time to think and actually had time to meditate and all these different things, and it got me thinking, like, really there's people who their realities is just this, basically four corner, and they've never been out there and seen the world and had an opportunity to even get to know themselves because they have just been in this realm the whole time. And it's like that's another thing um, where the privileged have a better advantage of because you guys you haven't really being blocked out. You're not as ignorant as you think you are. You actually know more and see more. And I think what we deal with is what do we do from here? Yes, I may have this money, and yes, if this guy is begging, I gave him this money for now, but it might not last forever. It's just a one-time act. But what do we really do as citizens, as the privileged, to give back? Because in essence, we end up becoming part of the problem, especially now when people are acting out of their survival mode. We are quick to judge them and we are quick to throw a stone at them, but we don't really know what their shoes are like. We don't really know what path they've walked. We haven't experienced what they experience, so we can't really judge them, you know, for what the result is now of the continuous years that they've lived. I'm not trying to, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to excuse anything, and I'm not trying to justify the act. The act, yes, is bad, and the act is lawless, and the act in itself is a bad thing, you know. But before you ask yourself, there was this woman who said this in one of the videos that I posted. I thought it was very interesting. She was speaking about the whole Black Lives Matter thing at the time. She said that um, snap. Wait, now I'm trying to think what I was saying. She said that snap, man. Can't forget this because it's an important point that I'm really trying to make. Um, but yeah, let me just carry on because maybe it'll come back to me. But people are acting out of desperation at this point, and it's this is a result of them being ignored. And what I was saying is that I'm not trying to justify the acts. What we must ask ourselves is not what, but why. That's what I wanted to say. That's what she said. It's not about what's going on. It's about why it's going on. That's what we should be focusing on. Why is this happening? In fact, most of us know why it's happening. We've known for years, but now it's reaching its climax, you know? And at some point things have to, reach its climax. At some point, this is a universe of balance and um, justice. And if you wrong people for too long, the tables are going to turn at some point. And no matter how it happens, at that point, it may actually even be justified. Something may be wrong, but if you've been wronged long enough, trust me, at some point, you end up becoming justified for you being wrong, in a way, if I put it like that. Because it's like, let's take it like back in the day, like you are enslaved most of your years, and then finally your only escape route is to revolt, to fight the power, because every single way you try to fight it in the right way hasn't been working, because you haven't been listened to. Your leaders haven't been listening to you when you try to do it the right way. You try to do it the way they said you should protest. You try to do it the way they said you should um, share your grievances, grievances. You try to. You did all of, guys. We know. If you watch the news a lot, I don't watch the news a lot, but I know every time I've seen the news, there's always been people complaining. Always. There's always been people striking. There's always been people complaining. There's always been people trying to go the right route, trying to do it in the lawful way. Where has that gotten them in 25, 27 years? However many years, you know? Where has it gotten them? Let's go back to apartheid. When the youth rose, the elders were against the way they did it, of them going against it violently, you know. But they did it anyway because they were fed up and they were not going to stand for the system that is trying to force them to do this. They stood against it and they did it in that way, and it made an impact, and it set the motion for an eventual freedom, and people actually hearing them out because they had to be dramatic about it to be heard. So now, when we see things like this happening, people trashing things, people throwing things, this is frustration. Have you ever thrown a tantrum before? Have you ever been in a situation where you've been so angry that you just threw stuff? This is basically kind of like that, you know? And even in your tantrum, it wasn't justified that you broke that thing, but you never, you weren't thinking straight because you were angry. You were frustrated. You were like, you may have regretted it later, but in that moment, you it was it was a way of you expressing yourself, you know. I feel like what's going on now is more than the surface level. It's more than just about looting and crime. It's deeper. It's a very deep psychological thing that has happened to us, black people. And most of the people doing this are black people. I haven't seen any other race. And I'm not trying to make this a race thing, but if we're being humanitarian and we're trying to be about human, then we need to also acknowledge a group of human beings that are suffering in the whole process of other fellow human beings. And we need to speak for each other. You know, we need to correct each other. We need to check each other. We need to be responsible for each other so that we all one, because we all meant to love each other as a humanity. And in loving one another, we have to be able to help one another also, and we have to be able to make sure no one's left behind, no man's left behind. Everybody has an equal right and equal opportunity to survive and to have the basic needs at least on this planet, you know. So with everything being the way it is, people living in the conditions that they've been living in, and most of the land being owned, and making it so difficult for people to actually be able to start afresh, is is what's probably now reaching a certain climatic um, a climatic part of the story. Because I think what we need the most is a restart. We need to really start thinking about where we're going from here and what is the most beneficial way. And we need thought leaders. We need people who understand the economics, who understand the psychological, who understand the mental, and who understand the physical, who understand the spirituality. Like we need to fix ourselves on all levels as people, and our people need that education also, and that information, and then also that provision to be able to have the opportunity to develop in that. So I don't know, man. Like for me, I feel like um yes, it starts with conversation and the right conversations, because we all need to be in one mind about this conception, and then from there we can start practically trying to do something about the situations, at least even for the futures to come. Because it can't carry on like this, you know? We can't carry on like this. Even if things get fixed now, and the malls and everything that's trash gets rebuilt, and then we're back to where we started, do you think, honestly, answering yourself, if it's sustainable? Do you think that that is the the right way to go? It's because it's all we know. We don't want to challenge ourselves with new ideas. We don't want to challenge ourselves with a new way of life, of how actually as human beings, as a community, we can actually live together, because we are merely speaking from a conditioned, or a circular bounded way, an idea, in how to be successful, and or how to survive and how to do something. But if you see that a certain way is not sustainable, and if a system is crashing, then we need to start thinking about how we can move forward from there as a humanity, for our kids, for our great grandkids, and so on. And this is going to have to take everybody to participate, because it's going to have to take not the poor mostly, actually. It's going to have to take the privileged to steer this direction. It's going to have to take somebody giving up a piece of land. It's going to have to take somebody who is so privileged to make a decision to want to bring change. We're all we all play a role. I mean, we can't do everything. One person can't do everything, you know. You just need to have the right intention and the right heart, and to be like, with what I, hey, I don't know when this thing cut, but I'm gonna carry on. This is gonna take this us coming together and trying to figure it out, and setting up a plot. But yeah, man, that's what I think of the situation. I'm not happy about it, obviously, but I'm also trying to understand it for what it is and the truth of it and the root of it and where it comes from. Understanding us as people and where things end up leading to, you know. The system hasn't been working for a while now, and we all know that, and we've all been complaining about that, if not publicly, privately, to conversations that we have with each other and so on. So I've heard all the cries also, you know. So that's why I'm like, this was like a melting pot. It was a ticking time bomb. It was something that was bound to happen. And I remember America set it off, and now it's happening here. And this should say something. It should say something when a group of people are all in one mind. Because all those people are all in one mind and they all understand one thing. They all understand the same thing, you know. That's why they're acting the way they are. They're actually like willing to go that distance as that huge group, you know. It's not just one person or five people or 10 troublemakers. No, even mothers are out there. Old mothers are out there taking stuff. Think about that. Really think about that properly, you know? And then ask yourself what got them to that point. You know what I mean? Obviously, the Zuma thing was a catalyst for this, you know, but it opened an opportunity for us to see the truth behind the lens, to see the truth of what people are really feeling. Because we don't take them seriously enough, because they just hear them talk, because they try to do it the right way. But now we are seeing this is a message that this is how dire the situation has been, you know. So yeah, man. Appreciate you guys hearing me out. That's my opinion on the whole thing. And I really pray and I really pray for a solution. I really pray for healing in this nation. A lot of us are broken. A lot of us have gone through a lot. Um, Take heart. These also could be opportunities for you to grow and opportunities for you to live up to whichever, whatever your purpose is or whatever you're meant to do and who you are. You know, this is opportunity when the world is changing and things are going haywire. You know, we need the leaders. We need strong people. We need people who have a voice. You know, we need people who have uh, authority, who have the knowledge, who have whatever. You know, we do need it. We need solutions. We don't want to just keep on complaining and keep on um, saying what's happening. It's important, yes, to say and be aware and say what's going on and show what's going on. But now we have to start, you know, thinking about solutions, uh, long-term solutions, sustainable solutions. Some of you went to school for these things. It's just that you weren't given the opportunity to actually use it the way that you your potential is, the way that you can actually use it, because you've been constricted for a while. But you have the skill or you have the knowledge. So wherever it is and whatever we got, let's just try bring it to the table, man. Because the government, we can't keep on depending on them. They are human too, and they're probably as shook as we are. And it's one of those things where you've been doing wrong for a while, and then suddenly, when you know it gets real and karma hits you, you get to a point of shock, and you don't know what to do. You know you messed up, but now it's like flip. Okay, but how do I fix this now? You know. Yeah. So yeah, man, that's basically it. I don't want to speak for too long. I feel like I have been speaking for long, but this thing was really in my heart to say, and I really hope that it reaches you, and it reaches somebody, and that you know, it's. I mean, there'll always be agreements and disagreements with these things. You know, there's people on one side and people on the other side, but I'm just trying to give you my opinion, but at the same time trying to give you the whole spectrum of the situation as much as possible as an observer. and a communicator and an artist and an expresser. So that is my take on it, man. So yeah, thank you and peace and love.